Today we will talk about XRP, XLM, Velo, and the connections into BRICS because they are exploring creating a stablecoin for global settlements. And 98% of the global central banks are researching, piloting, or deploying CBDCs. And we've got 40 countries have now applied to join BRICS in 2024. As Zimbabwe's VP is talking about an introduction of a new gold-backed currency, which is a step towards eventually phasing out the use of the USD in the economy. We also have some information on how Zimbabwe is connected to Stellar and XLM with these gold-backed digital tokens, which all tie into a cryptocurrency-based eSDR.
And what you're doing is we're putting together a process framework, a governance framework for banks to tokenize their asset on this network. For example, you can tokenize from money market fund to bonds, to equities, to deposits, and put that representation on the network and allow it to move between two parties. Today in Singapore, almost close to a dozen banks are already productionalizing their asset on the network. Standard Chartered Bank just announced, I think few months back, they're tokenizing their trade receivables. UBS is tokenizing their money market fund. JPM is tokenizing their deposits. So you can see that switch is happening already. And from a market efficiency perspective, you are dramatically reducing the operational processes out of the system. So we feel that without going into the complex definition of what token is from a legal standpoint or from an academic standpoint, I look at it as pure tech delight, complete tech delight. You take that piece of asset, put it in the network, where you can mix two things, the value of the asset and ownership of the asset into a single piece of token. And if I can get the network governed properly, you can move the asset among ourselves without the need for people to reconcile between databases.
A bit more on the Zimbabwe gold tokenization on Stellar. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe is about to issue RBZ, which is a gold-backed digital token on Stellar. Uhuru, I am just attempting that, is a decentralized wallet which is adopting Stellar as a core technology integrated by the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe. The RBZ has onboarded Uhuru Innovative Solutions, which is a fintech firm behind the WhatsApp-based payment solution. As a result of this coming together, and how it has harnessed the Stellar network, it has created a platform specializing in low and mid value payments that enable users in Zimbabwe and South Africa to make instant payments using stablecoins. And as we see on the combined map here of the different continents and their connections into things like XRP and XLM, there are deep ties into the commercial banks, central banks, and institutions in pretty much each and every country that is now involved in BRICS and that is trying to get into BRICS officially. And to relate that into Velo a bit more, because it does have heavy ties into Stellar and XLM, and it even has ties into Ripple and XRP, is what Saville was referring to about Velo in reference to BRICS. If there is more USD outside of the USA, and Velo is providing a way to bypass that in order for countries to save, what will be the value of Velo? Velo equals no USD. The goal is to bypass the USD in remittances and cross-border payments. What is the goal of BRICS? Isn't Velo attached to China, India, and Africa? Velo is a stablecoin. And on that note, I have talked about how that protocol and process actually works, which does not mean that Velo itself is or will be pegged. It is more of how the Velo token is used to collateralize stablecoins within its own platform. And I did talk about that in the video here about a Velo CBDC, which was actually paired by a moderator in the official Velo Telegram group. And a lot of that comes back to my hypothesis that XRP and XLM each be effectively representing the same value in the financial system in different ways, and how Velo ties into Stellar and then ties into IBM, which connects pretty much everything on this map here. That is a extremely high level overview of the connections involved. And to get back into the IBM tie-in here, the IBM Hyperledger is tied into pretty much everything that I talk about a lot. You've got XDC, Quant, XLM, HBAR, Casper, and XRP. But that is because they are all tied into the Hyperledger in one way or another. And from what I have shown, I think that because IBM came to Stellar in order to create IBM WorldWire back in about 2018, and with the upgrades that the Stellar Consensus Protocol has implemented, I think that IBM WorldWire and IBM Hyperledger are at the point where they are pretty much a different name for a platform that is operating on the Stellar Consensus Protocol. And to expand on my ideas here about how XLM and XRP and even SHX, Velo, and XDC are involved, we've got here that XLM equals retail and XRP equals bank to bank. And I think that is on the right track, and it is a very high level summary of what that can eventually become once we have regulations and adoption of these different kinds of instant payments forms. But it just goes to show how all of these connections that come back into XLM and XRP are popping up everywhere. Here is more on XRP and XLM. This is from the Monetary Authority of Singapore, and it is in partnership with the World Bank, IMF, UN, and a lot of other entities that directly tie back into XRP, XLM, and IBM, where it calls out that Stellar is an open source blockchain that connects the world's financial infrastructure, and how the XDO DLT is based on a modified XRPL to support private permissioned clusters for each financial institution. The Global CBDC Challenge uses XDOPay, Ethernom biometric smart cards, modified crypto wallet client, and XRPL as the baseline for XDO wallets and XDO DLT. So it's just another point to make that the things that people like me and others talk about in relation to how XRP and XLM and how they are both connected to the exact same individuals and entities that have a lot of importance in the traditional payment space and in the crypto payment space all tie back into BRICS countries and the relationships that have been established in the last 5 to even 10 years. And I'll be talking about the IMF a lot here. And on April 11th of 2024, we have an article about how the IMF prepares financial revolution to say goodbye to the USD. Global reserve currency status allows for amazing latitude in terms of monetary policy. The petrodollar monopoly made the USD essential for trading oil globally for decades. And as we see here again, with all of the ties in between XRP and XLM into all of these countries that don't want to transact in USD, it begins to become more obvious where we are actually headed here in terms of BRICS creating their own way to transact amongst each other without touching the USD. Only Ripple's stablecoin and BlackRock's USDC will be legal in the US. And that is primarily in response to the new stablecoin bill that is making its way into the US House. And if we are interpreting this right, USDT is operating illegally according to the new bill. And yes, there are things in there that are not great, but just because it is being reviewed right now does not mean that it won't be changed. And I don't trust the two individuals who put this into the House, but it is an extremely interesting starting point for what seems to be the year of regulation and adoption that might begin in 2024. And here's a little bit more on the tether ties. A payment stablecoin issuer that misrepresents a disclosure shall be subject to the penalty, the FDI Act, or Title 18 of the US Code. And Title 18 is all about crimes and punishments. Algorithmic payment stablecoins. It shall be unlawful for any person to engage in the business of issuing, creating, or originating an algorithmic payment stablecoin. It shall be unlawful for any person to engage in the business of issuing a payment stablecoin directly or indirectly in the US through any means or instruments of transportation or communication. It shall be unlawful for any person to offer or sell a payment stablecoin or to offer or sell a payment stablecoin to a U.S. person. The term national payment stablecoin means a depository institution chartered by the comptroller or a state bank supervisor, which is approved to conduct payment stablecoin activities. And a payment stablecoin is an asset that is or is designed to be used as a means of payment or settlement in which the issuer is obligated to convert, redeem, or repurchase for a fixed amount of USD. So what that all means is that if it's not created and organized and maintained in a way that is directly backed with USD and is in compliance with a lot of other things that are essentially just there to restrict and control, then it won't be able to be implemented. And it's interesting that Ripple is creating a stablecoin right now where they have said that it will be directly backed by USD. There is no time to waste on US stablecoin legislation. Congress must move quickly to pass tailored legislation providing regulatory clarity to US-based stablecoin issuers. Following the successful launch of MiCA, the framework for this crypto legislation in the EU will be exported to other jurisdictions. The current SDR is limited by the USD as it is centered by the dollar, which gives the USD too much importance. Meanwhile, 2024 JPM confidential reports call out the abandonment of USD as a reserve currency caused by a crypto challenger. Cryptocurrency eSDRs will end up as a stablecoin and will end up on a blockchain tech, which provides new functions in the digital economy, which will enable everyone, not just banks, to hold and use payments with central bank money. eSDRs are for everyone, not just banks. An e-currency eSDR for digital currencies has been proven to handle high volume in retail, production, and proof of concept environments since 2014 in 5 different countries. An eSDR is a super sovereign currency that would regulate global liquidity and currency stability. The internet and blockchain tech allows a new decentralized international digital monetary system. Issuance and management of the eSDR could be issued and managed by a consortium of private sector financial institutions rather than a multilateral organization like the IMF. This private sector consortium could include banks, payment providers, and other financial services firms that have an interest in improving cross-border payments. Is a cross-border, cross-currency platform proposed by the IMF, which is a collaboration between central banks and payment service providers to enable payments on a shared general ledger, which is likely how an eSDR would come into effect. And I have talked about ties into the IMF XC platform regarding Stellar and XLM. XC has a centralized multi-currency foreign exchange trading environment, which allows for the introduction of contracts and policies to control FX exchanges, which is pretty much what this kind of cross-border platform would entail, because you are using some kind of a crypto platform to transact in between different currency pairs. XRP as an eSDR, which is backed by the deposits of central banks and involves the major currencies of the world. Special drawing rights to countries over a public ledger. And FedNow is extremely involved in tokenized deposits. The idea of a digital representation of a deposit or a store value to use also as a means of transaction is something that the banks themselves are innovating in and are looking at via tokenized deposits and blockchain-based deposit accounts. And I have talked a lot on that topic that has a ton of ties into XRP. FedNow's connection to crypto. FedNow is a 24/7 system, which means that it is relying on private sector crypto-based solutions. And a Fed CBDC will be an enhancement of Now. Here is further evidence that the Fed has been experimenting with CBDCs for a long time. If you think that one will not come to the US, think again. It will be a CBDC-backed stablecoin, aka a stablecoin. And I have said that the perception of political resistance to a CBDC in the US is only a political orchestration. The US is involved in tokenized deposits right now, which is just one step away from being able to easily introduce a CBDC.